All right. Well, welcome back. You're still here. I'm still here. You guys are still here. Hair is still good again. I am still Christopher Harrison. That is still Tom
Racing.
And we're still here doing SharePoint Advanced Development. Now what we want to do is turn our attention to the first of two modules on SharePoint Server 2013 Search. Now, what we want to start off with is the basics of how search works. That if you're not already familiar with this, you are going to want to sort of understand now what's going on behind the scenes. That, like I mentioned before, SharePoint Server Search now is sort of a combination of fast and SharePoint search, and again with just enough change to make things confusing. So if you haven't done search yet with 2013, you're definitely going to need to spend a little bit of time, and that's really kind of my first introduction here, is to get in and take a look at the basics of how all that works behind the scenes, the different moving parts. Then we'll take a look at how to create our queries utilizing KQL, Keyword Query Language, and we'll talk a little bit about FQL, Fast Query Language as well, which is still around. And of course, you could go in and just do a normal search through the UI, but we're not here to do UI stuff. We're here to do things with code. So we'll also close everything off with code. And by the way, Tom, I'm going to say this to you, and I know this is going to be a little bit odd, but I want to do this at the end of the module. A couple of people did point out in the prior module there was one little mistake in our code. And so I just want to go back and clean that up. But we can do that at the end of this module.
Okay,
so make
good.
a mental note somewhere.
All right, I'll remember. Yes.
Yeah, that way we can go back and clean that up. Yeah, there was just one little mistake that I made when I set up the loop, but we can get back to that.
All right.
So in the meantime, let's pick on up with our SharePoint Server Search and how all of this works. So what we're going to start off with is the basics of that search architecture and what is exactly going to go behind the scenes. First of all, the first main item that we're going to have here is we're going to have our search index. Now, the search index is actually written out to the file system. And the reason for that is because in that way, we're not going to be reliant on SQL to store all of that information, not bringing in yet another SQL server, that instead, everything is going to be stored inside of our
file system.
inside of our inside the
really,
file system.
It's an important distinction to
index.
make, right? Because in SharePoint, everything's a list.
Yep.
And in SharePoint, all the content is stored in a content database. But this is one exception, and it's pretty much, I think, one of the few exceptions when you look at what is stored on the file system compared to what's stored in the database. One of the other places, of course, is the the SharePoint logs, the Unified Logging System, ULS, another of Christopher's favorite TLAs.
Exactly, yes. And, okay, so what I want to do here is I want to actually get in, and I'm going to build this actually on the fly here, my next little slide. So let me go ahead and do this, and this will be a little bit of fun since everybody knows my PowerPoint challenges. So let me actually get to the spot I want to be in, which is going to be right back here. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the SharePoint search architecture. Come on. There we go. Okay. So let me actually clobber this, and I really like the drawing tools inside of SharePoint, so I'm going to go ahead and actually use this. Now, for those of you that are familiar with prior versions of SharePoint Search, and in particular, let's talk about 2010. Then in 2010, what we had is we had a little thing called a crawl component, and that crawl component still exists. Now what my crawl component, there we're going to do, is going to be responsible for is actually going off and grabbing all of our data. So wherever it is that our data happens to be, and so this could be, let's say, inside of a web application. This could be inside of a file share. This could be, and let me just move that right over to there. This could be inside of a website. Whoops, we had our website. Inside of a SharePoint site. There we go. Our crawl component is going to be responsible for going off and retrieving all of the objects, all the information that's inside of there that we're eventually going to want to index. Now the question becomes, okay, well, how does it actually know what it is that we want to go grab? How's it going to know what web applications we want to go to? He said connecting those two. There we go. Copy paste. And there we go, file share. Now,
crawling really sounds like maybe it's a spider.
As a matter of fact, that actually is what it used to be called. What this is responsible for doing is actually going off and reading all of that data behind the scenes. Now, the way that it's going to know what to actually go grab is by utilizing a little crawl database back here. That my crawl database is going to know about all the different objects that are out there, all the different locations, what needs to be crawled. So when the crawl component kicks off and says, hey, I want to go grab an object, it's going to do that by going into the crawl database, finding out what the next link is, and then going off that direction and grabbing the object, and away it goes from there. Now, what my crawl component is going to generate here is it's going to generate a couple of different little artifacts here that it's going to send some data off to, and let me just go ahead and make my life a little easier here. Let's just go ahead and copy and paste. It's going to send this off to an index component. There we go. Now, our index component is responsible for maintaining that little index file that we were talking about before. So that's actually going to be right there on the index component. So our crawl component is going to go get the item. It's going to go ahead and break that apart, find out all the cool information about it, and send that information off to our index component. Now, the other part that's going to come into play here is an analytics component. When you're talking analytics, when you're talking about doing search, and you're talking about sending back relevant results, there's an awful lot that goes into that. So when you think about services like Bing or Google or any other search engine that you might like, web crawler, Alta Vista, which apparently was actually still a thing for quite a while. They actually just shuttered that maybe about like 3 months ago.
Ask.com.
Yeah, I think that's actually still around.
I think it is.
Yeah, but in any event, they all use very similar algorithms to respond to user queries to try and figure out what's going to be important. And there's a couple of different things that they go based on. One of them is going to be based on the number of times that somebody goes off, does a query, clicks on a particular link. That if people keep clicking on the same link over and over and over again, chances are that's probably important. So it's going to move that up inside the result.
It's going to analyze that. Is that what it's doing?
Exactly. It's going to analyze that. It's also going to look for the number of links to an item. So again, chances are the more times that an item is linked to, chances are the more important that item is. So again, it's going to push all of that up. The more heavily that an item is accessed just in general, chances are the more important that that's going to be. So it's going to use that analytics to help build proper results to help drive people into the right direction. So that's how things work a little bit behind the scenes. Admittedly, for anybody who actually knows a lot more about the search architecture, you might be looking at that and you might be going, hey, Christopher, that's sort of an oversimplification. I'm okay with that. That's really kind of what I'm going for. So I just want a real quick high level, hey, this is how things work inside of the search behind the scenes.
The good thing about writing search components for SharePoint is we don't actually have to write the indexer or
Exactly.
the crawler,
Yeah.
right? So we don't really need to write to the crawl database or write to the file system. That's all taken care of for us.
Exactly.
We just need to know a little bit about that.
Exactly. Yep. And that's really it. So let's actually get in and take a real quick look here at my search component.
Are you going to do a demo?
I am, as a matter of fact, which always requires me getting out of PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. And I just want to get out of full screen on Visual Studio, minimize that, and yeah, let's come back over to here. Okay. Yep, and I'm on Central Administration. Cool, cool, cool. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my service applications here. And inside my service applications, what you're going to notice is that there is my search service app. You're also going to notice, of course, that if I wanted to create a brand new search service, I can, just like always, hit the little drop-down New Search Service Application.
Why not have two of them?
Absolutely.
If one's good.
Yeah, well, there actually are times when having multiple is a good thing. That let's say, for example, that we've got a department, R&D is sort of a classic example, where there's a lot of private information that's inside of there that we don't in any way, shape, or form want leaked to the outside world. Now, SharePoint is still going to do things like security trimming, so that if I don't have read access to an item, I go in, I do a search, it's just not going to appear inside of the results. Well, the catch there is that can still sometimes appear. That let's say, for example, that we do a crawl and it goes off and it finds all the items. As part of that crawl, one of the things that it's going to do is figure out what these security descriptors are. So it's going to figure out whether or not you have access to the item. So that way it doesn't need to keep going back to the item going, okay, well, you're allowed to access that. That would just really slow down performance. Well, the problem is let's say that somebody goes in and takes your permissions away. Well, if you go back in and you do a search before the next crawl takes place, that item is still going to appear. Now, if you click on it, it's not going to open it up, but you now know that that item exists. If you decide, hey, you know what, we can't have anything like that at all, that we need to make sure that our R&D people are the only people that are able to see that R&D data, that we're never going to have any little bit of information leakage, one of the things that you might decide to do is set up a separate search implementation specific for R&D. So there are times when having multiple implementations can be very advantageous.
Sounds like you're planning the Surface 3.
I can neither confirm nor deny those rumors. Okay, so back over here on our search service application, I'm going to open this up, and you're going to notice something right away inside of here if you've done 2013. If I scroll on down, is you'll notice that I've got my my architecture. Now, I'll admit this is a dev server that I put together. I built this from scratch, and I did use the configure your farm wizard. Hey, you know what? Look, I get lazy sometimes. You know?
Man, putting that silicon into wafers must have been tough. Sorry.
That's okay.
You built it from scratch.
I see what you did there. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to need more coffee. So anyway, I'll bring that back over to here. What you're going to notice is that it created everything with our GUID names. You're also going to notice, by the way, for those of you who've done 2010, that there's no button anywhere around here that says, hey, modify the topology. That's now gone. That the only way now to modify the topology is just through PowerShell. Which is going to take a little bit of getting used to. And quite frankly, if I was going to give you any bit of advice, I really would recommend going in and doing everything from PowerShell, that avoid doing the UI. So in that way, you avoid having those lovely little GUIDs at the end of your database names. Kicking back to my screen here, yeah, avoid those. Because again, SharePoint loves GUIDs. Everything gets a GUID. So,
yes, it's true. And DBAs do not love GUIDs.
No, yeah.
Hey, that was another TLA.
Yes, there you go.
Database administrators.
There you go.
Of course. I'm
yes.
referring to our friends who make everything happen in the back end, because SharePoint stores everything in a database, right?
Exactly. Okay. Now, one One of the things that you might have noticed on the little module slide, on the little intro slide, is that there was a call out for the search schema. We are going to cover the search schema. I'm just going to talk about that in the next module, just because that's much more about the results side of things and in configuring that user experience. What I want to do instead for right now is focus in on just creating the queries and how we can do this through the UI and how we can do this through code in particular. Now, you're going to notice that SharePoint has a handful of different ways that we can query through search. The first option that we're going to have is our SharePoint query language, or I'm sorry, our keyword query language. And this is sort of the de facto standard. This is the default mechanism for going in and doing queries. Now, what KQL is going to allow you to do is a lot of the different advanced things that you may be very familiar with doing on, say, Bing. So let's say, for example, that what you want to do is you want to do a search for a particular phrase. So for example, maybe we decide that we're going to go off and do a search for, I don't know, developing SharePoint Server advanced solutions. And that's specifically what we want. So what you can actually do is just set up a set of double quotes, double quote, and then go ahead and type in developing SharePoint Server advanced solutions, and then see right up there, see? Go ahead and type that in, and close the double quotes out on the other end. And rather than looking for the word developing, or the word SharePoint, or the word server, or the word advanced, or all the word solutions, instead what's going to wind up happening is it will search for specifically that phrase. Now, let's say that, again, going back to that phrase, that I knew I was looking for an item where that was the title. Well, one of the other things that I could do with KQL is I could say title colon, and then, again, in quotes, put that in. So it would now only return items with that as the title. So even if that appeared maybe somewhere inside the body of the Word document, it's not going to be returned unless that is the title. And so we can do this with KQL.
And that title, would you call that a property?
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. That would be a property. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned property there, that in particular, that would need to be a managed property. And we'll talk more about managed properties in the next module. Excellent. I like the way you brought that together for me. There you go. You'll also
That's what
notice,
I'm here for, apparently.
And I appreciate that.
And bad jokes.
And bad jokes. Well, that's okay. I'm here for bad jokes, too. You'll also notice that we have FQL, and we'll talk a bit more about FQL. But FQL, Fast Query Language, is a much more powerful way of going in and doing querying. So if you're trying to get very specific about how that search is going to be executed, that you want to make sure that certain words are within a certain distance of one another, you can do all of that with FQL. The big thing to keep in mind about FQL is that it is disabled. You will need to go in and enable that. And I would also mention that the out-of-the-box search box, so the one that Microsoft provides, does not support FQL. You actually have to do that programmatically or through PowerShell, of course, that there isn't an out-of-the-box UI that will allow you to do FQL. Last but not least, you'll notice that there was the ability to do this with a SQL syntax, what's known as full-text SQL query. This is now no longer there. You'll notice that your older applications will break if you're making the move into 2013.
It's an important thing to point out because a lot of things with search are similar.
Yep.
But this one is not.
Nope. Okay. Now, when it comes to KQL, let's dig in just a little bit further into KQL here. What you're going to notice is that our KQL queries are going to be limited to 2048 characters. You can increase that. You'll notice that your simple queries are executed against that full text index, and in particular, they are not case sensitive. Now, when you go in and you do a query, it's going to look everywhere. And so you'll notice that it's going to be any crawled property, so basically any bit of metadata that it might find. So going back to maybe the example that we set up before where we had our little offices and we had our different locations and so forth, everything inside of there would be searchable. So if I went in and I did a query for, let's say, Geek Trainer, then it would return any item that was flagged as Geek Trainer, including the one little entry that I have inside of my office. You'll also notice again the double quotes, which we mentioned earlier, that you do have that capability. Now, if you want to get a bit more advanced, that you'll notice you can actually start putting in different operators. So if you want your own wildcard characters, which you can put a little asterisk on, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to do ands or ors, you can do that. You'll also have this little contains option. And in particular, that's where I have property colon and then whatever value it is that I'm looking for. So again, that title colon SharePoint, it would only return back items where the title was SharePoint. If you do want to do any form of proximity searching, so if maybe I'm looking for items that are close by one another, that would be near, not far, near, far, little Grover for, yeah, Sesame Street. Okay, moving right along. But anyway, you'll notice that we've got near. You'll also notice that we've got near or ordered near. And the difference between near versus ordered near is if we said, again, developing SharePoint Server Advanced Solutions, if I say near and I put in those 4 words or 5 words, all that needs to happen is they just need to be close to one another. It doesn't matter what order they happen to be in. So it could be Solutions SharePoint, and that would match. If I say near, then it must be in that order. So I would have to have developing, and then a little bit later on, I'd have to have SharePoint, and then a little bit later on, I'd have to have server. Yes, I do keep looking back here to remind myself of what the exact title is, since that's what I keep using for my, my little example.
You know, that is a very good description of near, ordered near. I did not understand it as well as you just explained it. But I can see why I would use that now that you've explained it. It's, I want to find these terms in this order.
Exactly.
Not just because they're there, right? They can mean a totally different thing if they're in a different order.
Exactly, exactly, yep. So we've got near. You'll also notice that we've got xrank, and what that will give us the ability to do is change the order in which things are going to be returned and basically say, hey, you know what, this word is more important than another word. So maybe what I'm looking for is SharePoint, but I also know that sometimes people will put in SP. But the problem is that SP might mean, you know, other things because it's just, you know, 2 very basic letters. So what I can do with xrank is I can say, you know what, if it's SharePoint, move that item higher up. If it's SP, move it up a little bit less because I'm not as certain that that's the item that I'm looking for. And then last but not least, if you are looking to define your own thesaurus on the fly, then you can do that by utilizing the words keyword there. Now, the last little thing to keep in mind about your operators is that they are case sensitive. The operators need to be in capital letters. Otherwise, it's just going to assume that you're just doing a search for words or xrank or whatever else it might be. Okay. Now, I could, of course, fire up the UI and do a search. But again, we're here to do code. So let's talk a little bit about doing code. So with code, the first little thing that you're going to notice is that we have a lot of different APIs that are available to us. That we do have the user interface. I don't know that I would necessarily count that as an API, but we do have the user interface. We've got our web services. We've got the server-side object model, the client-side object model, and REST. Now, what's great about all of this is that it's all based on industry standards. SharePoint Server Search is an enterprise search product. So I could be looking for data that's not just inside of SharePoint. It could be data that's elsewhere as well. And I may want to incorporate that into non-SharePoint applications. So fortunately, we have, as the back end, the ability to call out different web services by utilizing HTTP calls, by utilizing REST calls, or again, utilize the client-side object model. Now, you are going to notice that we do have web services. The web services are deprecated in 2013, which is a very fancy way of saying, hey, look, it works right now, but come a later version, it's not going to work. So now is the time to start getting away from this. You'll notice the endpoint, SP search as MX. You'll notice the directory, VTI bin. Your bit of trivia for today, VTI, of course, stands for Vermeer Technologies Incorporated.
Of course it does. Because that makes a lot of sense.
Well,
because this is Microsoft SharePoint Server.
Well, here's the reason. So SharePoint actually goes all the way back to the days of front page and front page extensions. Front page extensions, which originally put together by a company called Vermeer Technologies Incorporated, or VTI. And so SharePoint was actually originally built on top of front page, and the legacy of VTI still exists to this very day. So anytime that you see VTI, that's where that happens to be. All right. Now, if we want to utilize server-side queries, server-side queries using the server-side object model, you'll notice have to be run on a SharePoint server. They don't necessarily have to run inside of SharePoint, but they do have to run on a SharePoint server, and you'll notice that they do need to run in an x64 application. Now, the object that we're going to want is the keyword query class, and that's where we'll actually set up how we want the query to be executed, determine maybe the number of rows that we want back, etc. And then you'll notice that there is an execute method. Now, there's a little bit of good news, bad news here, that the execute method is deprecated. And it's been replaced by Search Executor. And what's nice about Search Executor is that we can use this for single or multiple queries. That's the good news. The bad news is it's a little bit counterintuitive, I think, that if you just go in and you're just simply using the IntelliSense, and you go, oh, okay, cool, keyword query, boom, 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 and you build up your query, and then you go ahead and this is my little symbol for typing, but you go ahead and you type in your little query, and then you grab your object, query dot, and you see execute, you're immediately going to assume, oh, okay, cool, that's how I execute my query. It'll work, but it is deprecated, meaning that it is going to go away, that we want to use the Search Executor. The nice part about the Search Executor is that we can actually hand in multiple query objects and allow it to round trip in one shot and get everything back in one shot. Again, that whole chunky chatty
Sounds
thing.
Chunky.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's get in and take a look at how to create our code here.
Demo. Code. I love it.
That's my little exiting PowerPoint dance, and I want...
it's a natural user interface,
this,
right?
And there you go. And we'll just slide that over there. Okay, so let me fire back up Visual Studio, and let me say add. And by the way, just to mention it here real quick, again, I'm going to do a console app, server-side object model search, and hit OK. And let me also... real quick on my solution here, make sure that's set for the current selection. I'm going to let you know right up front, I'm going to run this the first time and it's going to fail. I don't mind admitting when my demos fail and I wasn't expecting it. I'm expecting a failure here.
All right.
Okay? So just to mention that right away.
Well, if it does fail and you don't expect it,
yeah,
you just pretend.
Exactly. So, okay. So let me go ahead and add in a reference here. And again, I just want to mention, if you do want my code later on, again, at Geek Trainer. Here, let me, once again, notepad. And let me just go ahead, throw that up, make that a bit bigger. There we go. So at Geek Trainer, just go ahead and shoot me a tweet, and I will make all of this available after the session. Okay. In any event, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab Microsoft Office Server, Microsoft Server Search, and Microsoft SharePoint. So I'm just going to grab those 3 DLLs. Again, all of those are back inside of the SharePoint root. I'm sorry, I still say 15 Hive. I know I'm not supposed to, but yeah, SharePoint root 15 Hive. So I'm just going to go grab those, and I'm going to hit OK.
At least it's not Vermeer Technologies.
There you go. OK. Let's go ahead and say using, and let's say sp site. There we go. Site equals new, and sp site and http colon whack whack sp 2013 dev. And let's go ahead and say using, and let's say keyword query. There we go. Query equals new and keyword query, and specify my site. Okay, real quick aside here, for those of you who might not be familiar with this syntax, because I actually get quite a few people who actually have not seen this before, that you can actually stack using statements one on top of the other. and just one open curly, one closed curly. And what it will do is just unwind them when it goes to call dispose. So we'll actually do the query object and then unwind and do the site object, which is very convenient for situations like this where I'm having to create multiple objects that need to eventually be disposed there. Okay. Let me also, just because it hit me real quick, I want my demo to work because of this. I'm just going to make sure that I do a real quick, actually I only need an incremental. Well, it's not really going to matter, I don't have that much data. Okay. So that way, when I go in and I do a search, that it's actually going to come back with items here. That'll probably make the demo look a little bit better. Okay. So let's go ahead and say query, which is spelled like that, and then my query text. And you'll notice, by the way, that on the query object, you can basically determine from start to finish how you want this query to be executed. So if you do want noise words, you don't want noise words, whatever it is, you have the ability to really customize how this query is going to take place. In my case, I'm going to make it very simple for myself. I'm just going to say Geek Trainer, just like that. That's going to be my bit of query text. And now I need my executor, search executor, executor, executor. There we go. Equals new, and my search executor, just like that. And then my results equals executor and our execute query. So just simply execute query, pass in our query, close that out, and now I can go grab my items. Now, one of the big things to keep in mind about the executor is the fact that it can go off and execute multiple queries for us. So it could come back with multiple results set. So you'll notice that it's going to give us a result table collection. So it's not just giving us back one table, it's going to give us back multiple. So I will need to go in and grab the first one since I'm only executing just one query here.
You know, another thing I noticed in your third line of code there is why you wanted to start your crawl before you ran this, because you just added that item to the list in your last demo, in the last module.
Exactly, yeah, so I want to make sure that it actually picks up.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do a real quick for each, and you'll notice that what this is actually going to give me back is a basic data table. So if you've done, ADO.NET, it's going to give you back the basic data table here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say data row in result first, which will give me that first table, and then all of our rows. Oops, let's make sure that I actually go into the table. There we go, and my rows. Beautiful. All right, so we'll do our for each, and now I can go ahead and say console write line. And now I can say row and then pass in the particular name that I want. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of different options inside of here that you could actually go get the URL, you could get the title, you could, which is what I'm going to grab here, you could go off and get the rank and whatever else it is that, that you might want to display out. In my case, I just want to display the title here. Okay, now let me real quick kick back over to Internet Explorer. Sorry, still on the system here. And that should be done in just a couple of seconds. That's okay. It's going to fail regardless, so I can still go ahead and run it. So let me go ahead and just a real quick bit of Control F5 action. Let it do its thing. And what you're going to notice is, sure enough, it failed. Now, I just want to pause for a second and reflect on this. That for those of you who've done SharePoint 2010, and maybe you created like a basic Windows app for administering SharePoint behind the scenes, or maybe a console app, or maybe even just proof of concept. You went in, you created it, and of course, by default, Visual Studio is going to create a 32-bit application. Now, the error message that you wound up getting, if it was a 32-bit, was the URL was invalid.
Not very helpful.
Not very helpful at all, because all that you would do is you would go back in, I know that URL is right, and you'd copy and you paste it into the browser, and see, it works. And then eventually it would dawn on you, oh yeah, that's right, it needs to be 64-bit. If we come back and we take a look at the message here, please verify that you are running in a 64-bit execute.
Wow. Thank you, error message. That's helpful.
See? Okay. So now let me right-click, go to Properties, and let's go ahead and specify x64. There we go. And now, let me just make sure that my crawl has finished, which it should have. There we go. And now, let's go ahead and run my app. Chugga. Give this just a couple of seconds.
Where's the any key?
Better yet, where's my results?
Maybe try it in the browser. See if it picks it up.
Yeah, I'm just going to do this real quick. Let me just do a real quick search with Microsoft.
It ran, the crawl ran, but it didn't pick up your new item in your list.
Nope.
What site was the list on? Perhaps there was a failure.
HP. Yeah, when in doubt, check the crawl log.
Crawl logs are helpful.
Errors.
Good thing to know
42
about.
errors.
Errors are a good thing to check out.
An item failed, achieving.
Sending and receiving data, external content, processing, enrichment. The enrichment web service. Now that's a new one for me. I mean, I do like to be enriched, but I wasn't aware that was one of the things that SharePoint did through web services. So right now you're looking at the services that are running, right? The service applications. Make sure that they are all running. The search service isn't stopped. Good diagnostic, a good troubleshooting step.
Okay, when all else fails.
IIS reset, yes. You could check
Okay.
the services control panel, the ULS logs, right?
Yeah, I could go into the ULS logs. It's just a little bit more than I want to do on a live demo. All right. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do for right now. Is I'm going to rerun the full crawl here. Now that it's done the IIS reset.
When in doubt, crawl again.
Yep.
You know, I remember with the people search in like SharePoint 2007, sometimes you had to crawl like 3 times for whatever reason. I think after you deleted a user from Active Directory. And on the 3rd time you ran the full crawl, the user you deleted would no longer show up. But not the first one.
Okay.
The second one.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rerun the crawl here, and I'm going to let that go in the background, and we'll just come back and kind of pick it back up with slides here. So let me just start that, hit OK, and OK, so that'll start doing its thing. I do want to bring the code back up here real quick because the code is correct. That I promise you, the code is correct, which is really the whole point here. I'm just having some issue with the search executing behind the scenes, and of course it's always one of those where it only ever happens when you're live. That I mentioned earlier that I built the system from scratch. Well, not only did I go in and I built it, but I was testing everything back on Monday and on Wednesday just to make sure that everything was working fine. Everything worked flawlessly on Monday. Everything worked flawlessly on Wednesday. And now that it's live, now my search has decided to go sideways here.
Well, clearly, they're getting the same search results in the browser that you're getting in the code, right? Which is 0 results returned. So there's there's consistency there. And
there you go. There you go. All right,
and it helps. I mean,
that's
for
a good spin.
troubleshooting, you do need to understand, right, that if you're not gonna get any results in the browser, you're certainly not going to get any through code. You're doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And it also underscores the importance of having a good knowledge of what's going on the server side with the search architecture, right? Because if you can't, if you don't have a consistent service application support for the search here, you're going to have a hard time troubleshooting your code, right? Because you've got no search service.
Exactly.
Right? So it's one of those things that SharePoint does quite a lot, which is you're a developer, you want to write code.
Yeah, but you have to know the administration.
You have to know the administration too, right?
That's something that I tell everybody, that if you are going to be a SharePoint administrator, or a developer, you have to know the admin side. You just do. So, okay, well, let's talk a little bit now about doing it from the client side. And you'll notice that being able to do it from the client side can actually be done through both .NET, which this calls out, but I also want to highlight the fact that this can be done through JavaScript as well. So there is the CSUM inside of JavaScript as well. What you're going to notice is that it's almost the exact same options here. That you're going to notice that what we're going to wind up doing is we're going to set up our keyword query object. We're going to go ahead and utilize the search executor, and we're going to get that result table collection. So it's basically the exact same code that we saw before. Now, the one thing that I want to call out, and then we'll actually get back and do a demo here, is this little item right here, the query as user, ignore app principal. That if you are going to be creating an app that's going to be accessing the search store behind the scenes, and you want to make sure that you're doing this as the user so the user sees all of their results and not doing this based on what the app permissions are, you need to set that permission, and that needs to be trusted when the user installs the app into their system. Okay, let's get in and take a look at doing the query side here, or the client side.
More demo, I love it.
Yes, more demo.
Code. And I'm sure by now your IIS reset has finished in the
well, let's take a real quick look at my crawl.
All those hamsters.
It's still crawling.
The hamsters are just spinning like crazy.
Still crawling. Okay. In any event, let me go ahead and add a new project here, and this will be my CSUM search. There we go. And now I need a couple of references here. So we'll just go ahead and right-click, add service reference. Whoops, not service reference. Add reference. There we go. And what you're going to notice, if I expand this out, is that, again, we've got our client. But what you'll also notice is that now there's a client search DLL as well. So I'm going to grab my client search DLL, hit OK there. And now let's go ahead and start building everything up. So just like before, using client context. Context equals new.
Oh, no typing. You're typing. Nothing on the screen.
There we go. That was weird. Context equals new. And let's go ahead and say, again, http:// SP 2013 dev. There we go. And now let's go ahead and say my keyword query. And we'll go ahead and grab that. And by the way, you're going to notice I'm not going to put that inside of using. The reason for that is the keyword query for the client side actually doesn't have dispose. And technically, back over here, and this is just where instinct kicks in for me every single time. The dispose method on query here is deprecated, but look, maybe it's just me, but every time I see a dispose method, my brain just always put a using on it. So that's why I've got that inside the using there. So in any event,
memory is precious.
Yes,
we always want to reclaim it, right?
Exactly. So there's my little query, and then we'll go ahead and say query and my query text, and come here, query text equals, and let's say Geek Trainer. There we go. And we'll go ahead and semicolon. And then once again, my result, var result equals executor, which I need to create, which I'm going to do right up here. My search executor. equals new. And now, executor, I have lost the ability to type. There we go.
Every time you type the word executor or write or say the word executor, it makes me think of this show I'm watching on TV, The Reign, about the Queen of France and off with her head, right?
Okay, so here's my little result, just like before. We'll go ahead and say context, execute query, and then we'll go ahead and do a for each of our item in result value. And first, and we'll get our result rows from there. And then again, we'll do our console write line, and item, and title. Okay, now what are you complaining about up here? Oh, okay, I don't need my using up top. Not a problem. I'm just going to go like that, and KD. And I also have one other little mistake right here that also needs that, and I don't need that set of parentheses. There we go. Okay. And this also needs my context. It's all about context. I'm a big believer in that. Okay.
It's an important thing to keep in mind in the client-side object model. You always have to get your client context.
Yep. And, oh, I need my client runtime as well. Okay. So let me go back and rebuild that. So just a real quick right-click, add reference, and let's make sure that I've got my client runtime, and I do. Okay, cool. There we go. Now, all my squigglies go away, and now it's built. Let me go back in and do a real quick double check on my search. And let's go ahead and do a search. This is going to take it a second because, of course, I did my IIS reset and my Geek Trainer. You are fantastic. You know that? I love you. Okay. Yeah, 42 hours. Cool. All right. Now, you know what? I'm going to just give that one more shot. In the meantime, here's what I want to highlight about the code here is just simply the fact that it is near identical to what we had before. Really about the biggest couple of changes. Number one, of course, is that we need to call execute query to actually do the round trip. You'll also notice when we build up the object that we're going to create a brand new query object and then pass in the context like that.
You know, one other thing I want to point out is that in Module 5 on the user profiles, one of the things I'm going to show is searching for people search, right? Because it's not something we're covering even though we've got 2 modules on search. We're going to yet again do more search in the 5th module. And
more search.
We will see if my search demo works. But it actually, I'm doing client-side search, and it's very similar syntax to what you've got up there. So, and I'm going to be running that against SharePoint Online, so I'm going to trust the Microsoft engineers to be managing their search service for me, so I don't have to do that IT Pro stuff. I really love that.
Okay. In the meantime, let me put all that to rest. No pun intended.
Yes, rest.
But gosh, wouldn't you know, the next topic is going to be rest. I swear to you, I did not do this pun on purpose. But now that we brought it up, what do you say we take a look at REST? Now, for those of you that are not familiar with REST, REST stands for Representational Stateful Transfer. Now, I always remember that acronym, that abbreviation. You know why? Because I don't know about you, but at least to me, that doesn't mean anything.
No.
No, it doesn't really explain anything. But in reality, what REST is it's an HTTP-based protocol. It's really a set of ways of sending messages and getting data back. Now, you'll notice when it comes to executing our REST queries that there is the API that we're going to use. So it's going to be API search query.
Where's the VTI been?
You know, because of the fact that this is built from scratch, this is new, you'll notice that we don't need that BTI
Finally.
now, API honestly is actually sort of tucking away a lot of those different calls. You'll notice that everything is now available at the underscore API.
If nothing else, it's a shorter URL to remember. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Now, one of the biggest things that you'll notice, both going up and coming back down, is that this can work with XML or this can work with JSON, JavaScript object notation, which makes this very easy for me to call from both .NET as well as, of course, from JavaScript. So if you are creating an app, and let's say that you're creating a SharePoint hosted app, where everything's going to be running inside the browser, it's very nice, very easy, very convenient for me to go in and do this all from JavaScript. So a very nice way for me to go in and do that. I would also mention real quick here, the query suggestions are also available as well through REST. So if you decide that you want to kind of build up a more rich environment for your users to go off and do your queries from your application, that you can go off and do that.
Now, you mentioned JavaScript, but another nice thing about REST is I've heard rumors that even such people as Java programmers and PHP developers have been able to take advantage of REST.
As a matter of fact, yeah, that REST is essentially a de facto standard, an open standard. And so as a result, if you are doing PHP, if you are doing Java, and you want to be able to connect up and use SharePoint, that you can do that through the REST-based query. So that's extremely powerful. Okay, so what we saw here was SharePoint Search, and we saw a couple little demos on going in and executing queries, both from the client side as well as from the server side. And one of the things that I am going to do at lunch is probably just reinstall SharePoint, rebuild everything, and then make all of that
Boy, that's going to be a busy meal break.
Yes, meal break. Yes, thank you for that. Now, one last little thing that I want to do here is I do want to close out real quick just a typo that I had in an earlier demo here, just because I want to make sure that I can show that working.
All right, we're going to go back to Microsoft is in Seattle.
Exactly.
And so, by the way, are Christopher and I.
Yes, at the moment. Yes. Okay. So let's just go back to this to close this out. What you're going to notice is if I get back down to my little for each loop here, I had one little typo right here. I was using item because honestly that's usually what I would use in a for each loop here.
Oh, yes.
But I had used item up top. So unfortunately my brain just went into autopilot. And so I went to item instead of Office.
Okay.
So now let me do that with Office.
I did not notice that. I failed you in my
See, that's
pair programming role.
Yeah,
right?
where were
I'm
you?
supposed to be doing peer code review on the spot.
See?
And I totally missed that.
And it's Jive or Jive?
Jive.
Jive. Okay. And let's go in and find San Antonio, just to add in a brand new item. San Antonio.
Nice.
It's actually one of the few Texas major cities that I haven't been to yet.
You should come visit, especially this time of year when there's ice and snow around here.
Yeah.
Although you're in San Diego.
Yes.
So,
yeah. So, all right. So in any event, let me go ahead and run this. And sure enough, now you'll notice it's displaying everything out. So Geek Trainer San Diego, Microsoft is in Seattle, and Jive is in San Antonio.
Awesome.
So there's the close of that last demo. With that, what do you say we take an hour? We'll have a meal break, grab some food. We'll come on back. I'm going to fix my SharePoint search so that way the next module will also work about going in and doing our queries. So in the meantime, we'll see you in an hour.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.